Today on our 2015 Subaru Outback Wagon, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Etrailer Class 3 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver, part number E98847. So here's what our hitch is going to look like once we have it installed in our Outback. You can see that the cross tube is going to be visible and it's going to sit right below the bumper. But it is going to have that nice carbide flat black finish to it, so it's going to blend in with the plastic on the bottom of our bumper really nice. Now it is going to be a Class 3 hitch, which means it's going to give us that 2" by 2" receiver tube opening and have a really wide variety of accessories, whether we're looking for a ball mount to tow a trailer or a bike rack or even a cargo carrier. Now the way we're going to mount any of those accessories is going to be through the hitch pin hole here on the side, and it is going to accept a standard 5/8 pin and clip. Although they're not included in the kit, you can pick them up here at Etrailer.com along with locks to keep your accessories safe. Now as far as the safety chain connection points go, it's going to be a plate style welded to the bottom of the receiver tube. And as you can see, we're not going to have too much trouble getting most size hooks on or off. We're going to have plenty of room and not have to worry about any kind of interference. For the weight capacity, our hitch is going to have a 600-pound tongue weight, which is going to be the maximum downward force at the receiver tube, along with a 4,000-pound gross trailer weight rating, which is the amount it can pull, including the trailer and everything we have loaded on it. Now with those numbers in mind, you always want to double check your Outback's owner's manual and never exceed the manufacturer's recommended weight. I'd like to give you a few measurements, and that's going to help you whenever you're looking at accessories for your new hitch, such as a ball mount, a bike rack, or even a cargo carrier. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the outermost edge of the bumper, it'll be right about 2 3/4 inches. That measurement is going to come in handy when you're looking at folding accessories to make sure you have adequate clearance so you don't make contact with the rear bumper. From the ground to the inside top edge of the receiver tube opening is going to be right about 15 3/4 inches. That measurement is not only going to come in handy when you're looking for a ball mount to match up the rise or drop to your trailer, but also at that height I would recommend a bike rack or a cargo carrier with a raised shank. That way we have a little bit more ground clearance. So now that we've seen what our hitch looks like and gone over some of the features, let's show you how to get it installed. To begin our installation, I do want to mention that we already ran our 4-pole wiring, and we actually ran it out through our grommet at the bottom of the trunk. It's going to be a lot easier to see and get to before we get the hitch in place. So this would be a good way to have your wiring right by your hitch once we have it in place. But to get our hitch in place, we are going to have to lower our exhaust down. So you want to make sure that you get a strap and you support it so that it doesn't hang down too far. So we'll just find a spot on our frame, hook our strap up, and then we're going to start working on loosening and removing the rubber isolators. So we're going to have a rubber isolator towards the middle of our Subaru at the back of the muffler, and if we move to the outside, but we go towards the front of the vehicle, we'll have another rubber isolator. I'm going to take a little bit of spray lubricant and I'm going to spray it on the isolator and the rubber hanger. And then your main goal here is just to take a pry bar or whatever you have, and you're going to want to slide that rubber isolator off. So that once we get them both off, we'll be able to move it down. Now, if removing these two doesn't give you enough slack, because we are going to have to remove that heat shield above it, we can actually move farther back in the exhaust. Right about where the axle is, we'll have another isolator, and we can remove that one as well. Just make sure you do have that support strap or something supporting the exhaust so it doesn't come down too far. Now with our exhaust down, we can loosen up that strap so we have more room to work with, but it's still going to be supported. So then our heat shield is going to be above our muffler. It's going to be held in place by 4 bolts. We're going to want to pull those out, so we'll grab a 10mm socket and we can take them out. When we pull that heat shield out and set it aside for right now. Now on each side of the frame, towards the very back of the bumper, and then right before we get to the subframe and axle, we're going to have these plastic or rubber plugs in the frame. Here we're going to take a flathead screwdriver and we're just going to pop them out. So we're going to take both the plugs out on the front and rear on both sides. Now the hole at the bottom of the frame towards the front of our vehicle is going to act as our access point to get the rest of our hardware in place. We're going to need to enlarge this hole so that we can fit our spacer block and our carriage bolt inside. Now obviously it's not big enough right now. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can either use a file, a rotary tool and cut it out, or you can use a step drill bit like I'm going to. And we're just going to enlarge that hole and periodically check, because we only want it to get big enough to where we can get our spacer block and carriage bolt inside. Looks like we still have a little bit more drilling to do, but once we have this side done, we're going to go ahead and repeat that on the other side of the frame as well. So now that we have that hole enlarged, you can see our spacer block fits as well as our carriage bolt. Now it's never a good idea to leave exposed metal on the bottom of your vehicle, so I'm going to take a little bit of spray paint and spray around, hopefully preventing any kind of rust or corrosion from building up. And we'll do that for the other side as well. So we're going to get ready to fish wire our hardware in place. We're going to start with the hole that's towards the very back of the bumper. We're going to take our pull wire, and I'm going to put a small bend in it. I'm going to feed the coiled end into the frame. I'm going to be going towards the access hole that we just enlarged. Now you want to be careful if you do have to reach in, because you don't want to cut yourself. Sometimes it helps if you just reach in so you can feel the end of the wire and help guide it out. And once we have the end of the coiled wire out, you want to make sure that the tail on the other end stays on the outside of the frame. So I'll go ahead and put a small bend in there so it won't go in. Then we'll take one of our spacer blocks, feed it over the coiled end of our wire, and we'll push it up into the frame. And we'll take our carriage bolt. We're going to thread it onto the end of the coiled wire. So we can feed that into the frame as well. And we'll pull on our pull wire until the bolt drops down. For right now, we're going to go ahead and leave our pull wire attached, so we don't have to worry about the bolt going back inside. And we'll repeat that entire process for the other side as well. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to lift our hitch up. We're going to take our pull wire and we're going to feed it from the top of our hitch going down through those holes. We lift our hitch up. So the bolt's going to drop down through our hitch. And when we remove our pull wire, you want to make sure that you unthread it and you don't just rip it off, because we are going to have to use each side again to put one last bolt in. So we'll carefully remove our pull wire, then we'll take a flange nut. We're going to loosely secure it, putting one on each side. So now we'll notice that we are going to have one more attachment point back here, but it's going to go into the solid section of our frame. So I'm going to take a 1/2 inch drill bit, and coming in from the bottom going through the hitch, I'm going to mark my frame just by using the drill a little bit. And then it'll give me a nice center point. I can come back with a smaller bit and make a pilot hole. So now that our pilot hole is drilled, I'm going to come back with a 1/2 inch drill bit. I'm going to enlarge that hole to a full 1/2 inch. Now, since the bolt's going to be the same size as the 1/2 inch drill bit we're using, it's not a bad idea to just kind of move the drill bit around a little bit to wall out the hole just enough so there's room for the bolt to move. We can always double check by taking our bolt and making sure that it will go through the hole. Now we're going to use that same method. We're going to take our pull wire, feed it in through our mounting location, and go back towards our access point. Have the coiled end come down. We'll put our spacer block over the end, and then thread our carriage bolts in place. Make sure it comes down. We're gonna remove the pull wire and attach another one of the flange nuts. I want to repeat this for the other side as well. I'm gonna come back with a 3/4 inch socket and I'm gonna snug up all my hardware. Now we're gonna come back with a torque wrench and a 3/4 inch socket, and we're gonna torque all the hardware down to the specified amount in the instructions. You want to make sure to repeat that for all of your remaining hardware. Now our heat shield is going to have to be trimmed in order to get it installed because our hitch is taking up some of the space. So if we come to the outer edge here where we have our 2 mounting points, right in front of one of them we're going to have that little curve right here. If we just make a line and then come straight across, we're going to be cutting out this section right here. So we're going to be losing that 1 mounting point. Now cutting this is going to be fairly easy if you have a pair of aviation snips, because it is just really thin sheet metal. So you just cut that section out. And then any other minor trimming that we may need to do, we can always do, but we'll go ahead and test fit it to make sure that it lines up properly. We can loosely put our heat shield in place. Take those 10mm bolts, at least loosely by hand get a few in just so it'll hold itself up. Just keep in mind we did lose that 1 mounting location, so we're only going to be putting 3 back in. But as you can see, we're going to have plenty of room where it's not going to interfere with our hitch. And we'll come back with that 10mm socket and snug up those bolts. So we can put our exhaust back in place now, but I'm going to take a little bit of spray lubricant, spray it on the rubber isolators. It's a little bit easier to get them in place. We just lift our exhaust up, slide the rubber isolator back onto the hanger. Make sure to get the one by the axle as well. Once we have all of those in place, we can remove the support strap from earlier. That'll finish up your look at the Etrailer Class 3 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver, part number E98847 on our 2015 Subaru Outback Wagon.